Welcome everyone to the afternoon session, our second citizen and community science session of the conference. This is actually one of the topic areas where we had so many papers and presentations proposed that we created 3 separate sessions. So we'll also have a session tomorrow afternoon that my colleague Amanda Coughlin will be leading, and that will be really interesting because they'll cover a lot of the programs, the community programs that are being operated under EPA grants. Okay, so for our first hour of the session, we have a panel of presenters that I will introduce to you one by one. They're actually not sitting in order, I just noticed, but that's okay. We can work with that. So our first presenter, we're going to do 12-minute presentations, and then at the end of the 4 presentations, we'll have time for Q&A. So we'll have the microphone in the middle of the room set up. So our first presenter is going to be Jill Johnston, and Jill's coming to us from USC, and I'll ask her to come up to deliver her presentation.
Does this change it? All right, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a participatory air monitoring program that we've been working on with youth in environmental justice communities in urban Los Angeles. And so I'm an assistant professor in the Division of Environmental Health at USC and also director of community engagement programs for the environmental health centers. And so our work largely tries to make sure that a lot of the science and the epidemiology that comes out of understanding the impacts of air pollution and specifically traffic-related air pollution on health is translated and is able to be used by members in the community, particularly those in the environmental justice communities. So these areas that are sort of most burdened by a lot of sources of air pollution and other cumulative exposures. And specifically, we focus a lot on the goods movement corridors within Los Angeles. And so one of the largest ports in the country is located in Los Angeles and Long Beach. About 40% of all cargo that comes into the country comes through these ports. And every ship that comes in brings about 4,000 to 9,000 pieces of cargo that's moved by truck and then train and into warehouses and goes through largely very vulnerable communities of color. And so community organizations have brought up several local concerns around sources and impacts of air pollution. Many of these tied to the goods movement corridors, thinking about trains, trucks, cars, as well as oil drilling. So Los Angeles is the largest urban oil drilling basin in the country, and we have about 5,000 active oil wells there. And so, groups want to know more about what the exposure looks like, who's being exposed, and building that expertise up locally so they can use it for advocacy. And so there's a lot of burden placed on communities to really be able to document their own reality and to develop data that they can then take to policymakers or regulators in order to get action done to address some concerns and sources of exposure that's happening at the community level. So with that, there has been growing interest in Los Angeles as well as a lot of places in terms of being able to collect their own data that's generated and owned by the community. And we've built off a tradition of working with community groups to be able to better document impacts of diesel-related pollution. So initially, some of our air monitoring programs work with largely women in the community to do truck counting as well as ultrafine particle counting near truck corridors and compare it to other places in the community. But these activities were largely limited to going out for 15, 20 minutes. The ultrafine particle counters are sort of heavy. They're not as portable as some of the newer devices. And a lot of times we're standing at really highly exposed areas, so we don't want to spend all day there. And so with a new collaboration with several environmental justice organizations in urban Los Angeles, we really focus on increasing the capacity of youth to use air quality data and specifically sort of try out and understand air quality data by using some of these low-cost sensors. and thinking about exposures that happen during daily life. So what does that look like just on your commutes to school, going to work, at your house? And then using this data to really build the capacity for them to understand air pollution, air quality, and the impacts on health. So we formulated this project called The Day in the Life. That was really around both building the environmental health literacy of youth living in these environmental justice communities, being able to generate data that's owned by the participants and by the community organizations, as well as increase awareness and understanding of what the sources of air pollution are in the community and how that may be impacting their health. And so to do this, this is a project we did over the course of the year in 4 different neighborhoods in Los Angeles with 3 different community-based organizations, and had a total of 25 youth complete the entire program. And so it consisted of several aspects. First, doing a workshop, hands-on workshop to understand more about air pollution, goods movement, and what it means for health. Then integrating storytelling and a media organization to train the youth on being able to use pictures and videos to document their experience and be able to tell their story. Using both of these tools to then do 24-hour data collection with air monitors, as well as collecting stories and pictures to document sort of a day in their life. Reporting back within their organization, and then it sort of accumulated with a large youth summit where we brought all these different youth and organizational members together so they could share more about their neighborhoods and their experience and get to build those relationships across communities. And so to do this, we used the RIVM to measure PM 2.5, and so trained the youth on how to use the RIVM, and also gave everyone a phone so they could see real time what the data looked like. And so this is a picture of one of the members who brought the RIVM to City Council and presented to the city on the impacts and what they saw in terms of air pollution and an oil drilling site right near his home. And with this, sort of one of the lessons learned, and we developed this with a very sort of troubleshooting manual around the RIVM. Our first attempt to do this with youth, they ended up collecting noise data rather than air pollution data. And so we went through and have sort of a lot of sort of troubleshooting checks to make sure that all the effort they put into it, they are actually collecting data. And so developed a lot of tools to be used and to follow to make sure that the monitors are working properly and collecting data when we hope they are. And then we integrated this into a tool from Esri on the story maps. So we're able to put together the air pollution data and people's quotes and stories and pictures into one online platform to share among the members of the project. And so I just wanted to bring a couple examples from a few of the participants who weren't able to come to this meeting, but to share a little bit about some of their experiences and some of the realities. So says, in my walk, I get a lot of exposure to different things like the freeway. I pass by the 710 every day. What stood out in my walk was that no one really minds that the freeway is there, even Allen Co., which is an oil drilling site. No one really questions what is behind the gates unless they know about it. This project made me feel that I want to spread the word. I want people to know what is going on in the community. They deserve to know and to take part in what we're doing to stop oil drilling. And the next one is from Isabel. She said, my map is literally red and orange, and this is my daily routine as I take the bus every day coming back from school. I am surrounded by factories, refineries, and ports. I breathe the toxins that go in and out of my body every day. Low-income communities also face environmental racism. Our neighborhoods are filled with people with diseases, and our government does not do anything. And so she really focused on looking at the impacts of riding the bus every day to and from school. And then finally, this is Ashley, and she said, I decided to focus my images on the pollution happening around our parks. There are only 2 parks that are near my home where the refineries are visible, and you can see the particulate matter in the air. Many babies, kids, adults, and even animals breathe in the pollution that causes serious damage to one's health. I also presented at my class where I talked about my experience with the RIVM and how along the refineries the particulate matter was really high. And I think one thing we noticed from a lot of the stories that the communities told and the youth told was how having this data and kind of being able to see it and visualize it really helped sort of move them to want to take action and to speak to city council, to speak to their family members, to speak to people at their schools, to be able to set up air monitors or change when they go outside to do running in response to the data they collected around PM 2.5 levels. And so reflecting on sort of what we learned from this experience is, I think this is really a tool that can, help build the capacity and empower the communities to collect their own data and help with the advocacy they do, because they can bring this data to different officials and in different places, as well as to their own family. It's a good starting point to talk about the different kinds of air pollution that are in there. Like, even though only measuring PM 2.5, it can launch to sort of a more complex understanding of what's in the air basin and what exposures look like, and also talk about the limitations of a lot of these air monitoring devices and what we can and cannot know from what we're measuring. And with this, we're exploring the use of other low-cost sensors, because ultrafine particles or diesel is also a big concern in the area, and we don't really fully capture it by just looking at PM 2.5. And so I think this offers sort of an interactive tool that can really be personalized to whatever the concern of the youth or the community organization is, and with integrating it with storytelling tools can really ground it in lived experiences. I think visualizing and providing numbers to the air pollution that we see can really help provide immediate feedback and for people to kind of understand and contextualize air pollution. That doing all the training and troubleshooting, not just giving people an air monitor, but really understanding what they're doing and why and what it's measuring, I think helps sort of build the capacity of groups. And also, kind of one of the big things that the youth brought up is that the highest levels of exposure we saw was among someone who works inside McDonald's. And we didn't really integrate thinking about indoor sources of air pollution into our initial trainings, which is a limitation and something we're going to work on moving forward. So just want to acknowledge the partners in this, which is Communities for a Better Environment, the South Central Youth Leadership Coalition, and Promoting Youth Advocacy, Asian Pacific Islanders Forward Movement, and LA Grant Media, as well as GSC. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. This is a really interesting presentation. And so our next speaker has come to us from a distance from the Netherlands, and it's Ernie Weijers. Okay, thank you. And he's going to talk to us about a very interesting topic of citizen science and regulatory monitoring, bridging the gap.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Thank you for inviting me here over. Let me first say something about RIVM. It's a National Research Institute. We are funded by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Environment, but in our work we are totally independent. I myself work at the Department of Research and Innovation and Monitoring, and I give this talk on behalf of my colleagues Hester Volt and Marita Vogt. And doesn't work. This one? Yeah, doesn't seem to work. Now it works. Briefly, the outline, I would like to explain to you why RIVM is involved in citizen science. I will demonstrate this with a few examples, depending on the time. And in the course of the presentation, I talk about lessons learned, benefits, and the challenges. And if there's sufficient time, I'll also talk about the future roadmap. RIVM is responsible for the National Air Quality Monitoring Network. We measure air quality at 67 stations. We do this in cities, in rural areas, and near industry. The resulting data, they are used in the modeling of air quality all over the Netherlands, and also for the forecasting of air quality and, if necessary, the alerting. In 2016, we agreed with the ministry to start a program of as topic innovation of monitoring. In essence, one of the aims were to find out what the relevance is of the sensors and citizen science for the regulatory monitoring. I have to say, to be frank, I think one of the other motives for the government was to find out whether the monitoring can be done cheaper. For us, there were different reasons also involved. Obviously, the advances in sensor technology and also the widespread use of smartphones, really measuring air quality in the presence of a lot of people is of interest. How do you cope with that as an official institute? There's the attractive prospect of a high spatial and temporal data resolution, especially interesting in urban environments. And also citizen science leads to new ways to communicate with citizens. And this asks for a different attitude for an institute like RIVM. We need to change our attitude and coming out of the ivory tower of science. So at the moment we are participating in a number of projects. Mainly they involve air quality. But we also have a project in radiation and noise, but I will stick here to the air quality. The first example is actually an official network in the Netherlands. It's about measuring ammonia. As you probably know, deposition of ammonia has adverse effects on vegetation. It's a big issue in the Netherlands, and already in 1994 they started to establish this network. We use passive diffusion tube to measure the ammonia concentrations. We do this at 82 locations on a monthly basis, and with 3 tubes on average per location. We have now 250 tubes hanging around in the nature reserves, and these are locations that are not very easy to reach. How do we manage this? We do this with the help of volunteers, people who are interested in nature, who are concerned about nature, and also with the help of the park rangers. But they do not get paid for this. They change the tubes and they send it to us, and then we calibrate it for the ammonia concentration. What they do get in return is a sort of report with the levels of ammonia in their area, and also some perspectives, some conclusions, and how it relates to the other areas. 1994, I don't think citizen science, at least that is the term we used in Europe, was not a term that was already there, I think. But in essence, we consider this as a citizen science project. And also, I think it's important to stress that a network like this could not be done without the help of these volunteers. Second example, this is an example where it is a bottom-up approach. We joined the Amsterdam Smart Citizen Lab. It is organized by the Weijers Society, a technological institute making all kinds of innovations for citizens. The aim of this project was to develop simple tools to measure their living environment. The citizens should develop these tools. And interesting of this project was, and belonging and corresponding with the bottom-up approach, that all the citizens were involved in all the steps of the project. Actually, they were the dominant factor of all the steps. It already started, of course, with the issue making, the definition of the project. What are we going to measure? How are we going to do this? They stick all together. There was a lot of discussion about it, and in the end, they came up with a number of parameters like air quality, noise, and dirt, and even social cohesion to find more about these issues. The next step was the sensor making, and that is where RIVM joined in. Not in the beginning, we had a very relaxed approach. We were merely passive observers, but during the course of the project, the citizens started to ask more and more questions, and we also gave more and more answers, of course. There were 3 other steps. We were involved in the measurements, in understanding the results, and also the comparison with official data. And what was the result of all this? Well, we talked also a lot about the sensor and how to build the sensor. The group finally arrived in making an NO2 sensor, which you can see here on the back of the bike. We are in Amsterdam, so we cycle a lot there. Actually, it was meant for stationary monitoring, but they put it on the bike and they drove around in the city. That was not a very big success. How do you say, the movement of the bike disturbed the measurements a little bit too much. But what our lessons that we learned is that in this project, we felt that the citizens wanted support and information from experts. And I also think that the support of those experts increased the success of the project. In this case, it's also the timing appeared to be very crucial. You should give this information at a very, very early stage, so there's enough time to change the plan and even to improve the plan. And on the other hand, you should not overdo it. If you give too much information, people feel restricted. They become a little bit perhaps frustrated. And you should also accept as a scientist that citizens may have different goals and that they want to do different things. And the last example that I would like to explain is the firework experiment 2017-2018. In this experiment, people measured the peak concentrations of particulate matter during the firework during New Year's Eve. These are actually the highest concentrations that we measure during the entire year. The kits were provided by RIVM. RIVM also built a data portal to which the data could be uploaded and viewed nearly online. There were contributions of other initiatives. And for us, the important questions was how many people would be involved and how would the results look like, and what was the response of the participants during and after the project. We used here different systems like Xinye and Nova. One other thing that was of interest is that the citizens had to build their own housings. So as you can see, there was a lot of creativity involved here, and I'm pretty sure that it has affected the measurements. Still, it was a nice idea to do this because people had to invest time and money and energy, and they became more involved into the project. So at the moment supreme, the right moment, there were more than 130 censuses online. I don't think they were all measuring what we wanted them to do, but okay. This is an example of a time series where the time series measured in Amsterdam. As you can see, there's a lot of variation, but at midnight, there's an increase in concentration and a gradual decrease after that. And at 2 o'clock, the effect of the firework was already gone. These are the absolute concentrations as we are using different systems. For example, these can be difficult to compare. So we also calculated relative concentrations, and we built a new kind of image of exploding flares representing the concentrations, the size, and the color represents the concentrations of the particulate matter. And this was done nearly online, so you could see the bulbs growing and decreasing, and it was like a real firework actually. Then ending up with the results, we averaged after the project the sensor results, and we found that the concentrations were 70 times higher than what was measured in the background. Also, it was quite remarkable that the official network measured a lot more. It was about 40 times higher. So apparently, the sensors missed a lot of the particulate matter. I will skip this one. Come over to some of the experience that we had. We found the citizens very motivated to measure air quality. They will do this for personal, perhaps for personal reasons. For example, that they are concerned about their health when they live in a busy street. Always they want to compare with official data for various reasons. Perhaps one of the reasons is that they do not trust the official data. There's a lot of discussion, and I must say that the citizen science offers a very nice platform for this kind of discussions. We also saw that the motivation is stronger when the participants invest, and accessible expert information is also needed to support the citizens. And also one last statement that I would like to make. That is that the research institute can make citizen science more successful, but management of expectation is also needed. And then I mean that you also have to talk about the quality of the sensor, the accuracy of the sensor, to avoid that people expect too much and become disappointed in the end. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. That was very interesting, and got a few questions jotted down there we can talk about later. But okay, so our next speaker is Nancy Carmona, and she's coming to us from Seattle and is going to talk about the work she's done there with low-cost sensor networks in Seattle.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nancy Carmona, and I'm currently a doctoral student at the University of Washington. And today I'm going to be talking about the work that I've been working on for the last year in developing a low-cost air monitoring network in Seattle. And I'm going to conclude with talking about some lessons learned and strategies in building relationships with our community partners. Great. So the Community Air Monitoring in Puget Sound study was developed in order to engage residents in the Seattle region and provide concerned communities with the opportunity to take a decisive part of the community engaged air pollution study. Now, the CAMP study was funded through a diversity supplement from a parent study that is actually looking at the relationship between air pollution exposures and Alzheimer's disease, cognitive decline, and dementia. Now, this study, which my advisor, Dr. Leanne Shepard, is the co-principal investigator of, is leveraging a cohort in the Seattle region, about 5,000 older adults in the Seattle region that have been followed for decades. So we're already engaging community members through the active cohort, but through this study, through the CAMP study, we had the opportunity to engage residents that were not necessarily older adults in the cohort, and we could involve them in the study in a way that really provided them with the opportunity to take agency. So here's just a framework of the study. Like I mentioned, our study is funded through a diversity supplement. So we tried to use some of the traditional community engage frameworks and apply it into our study. So the first thing that we had to do was we had to identify potential partners for our community engaged study. So even though there's a lot of different frameworks that can be used in community engaged research, this is the framework that we established for our study. And throughout the work that I've been doing, I've been guided by my advisor, Dr. Vanessa Gabrys, who is an expert in community engaged work. Great. So like I mentioned, we started with recruiting our community partners. And in order to do this, we contacted the Child Care Resources Organization, which is an organization that works with different child care providers to provide the resources and trainings. So through them, we were able to get a list of all the accredited child care centers, home-based and center-based, within certain zip codes in the Seattle region. So after we had this massive list, we started with calling places, emailing, going in person, because it was really hard to contact child care centers. So the work was done by myself and 2 other undergraduate students who were helping me with the study. So a lot of the participating child care centers and community organizations that we reached out to were concerned about air quality in their communities and were eager to participate in the study. So we were particularly interested in recruiting organizations in the South Seattle region. So this is just a screenshot of traffic around 5 p.m. in Seattle, just from Google Maps. So you can see there's a lot of highways along the I-5 corridor. There's usually a lot of traffic. There's also heavy road use from trucks from the port. And historically, neighborhoods in South Seattle have higher levels of air pollution in comparison to the neighborhoods in the north. It's also a region where there is lower SES, there are more minorities compared to other sections of the city. So after recruiting the organizations, we conducted a needs assessment to determine what specifically residents were concerned about. So we asked them questions about air quality knowledge, their behavior, their practices, just so we could learn a little bit more about them. And we had about 180 participants finish and turn in this questionnaire. So here are just a couple examples of the questions that we asked. So questions about air quality, where they find information about air quality, and their view of air quality in their community. So not necessarily if they're checking every day, but how they perceive air quality. Great. So another thing that we established in our study was creating a community steering committee. So we asked to have a couple volunteers from each organization that's participating in order to get regular input from them on the design of the study itself. So we really want this to be community designed and engaged, and we want to get their feedback on a regular basis so they are informing the design of the study. So we are using low-cost air monitors in our study, and these monitors were developed by Dr. Edmund Sato at the University of Washington. We have low-cost sensors in our monitors, but as we all know, these low-cost sensors require a lot of back-end work. So we do co-location regulatory monitors at the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency and also the Department of Ecology, and we have a big team that does a lot of calibration work and is developing models in order to give us the best estimates from our low-cost sensors. Like I mentioned, our air monitoring takes place at a variety of different community locations. So this is just a map of the locations that we have right now. So right now we have 5 sites that are participating, and we're building our network based on the network of our network, basically. So we're reaching out to our community steering committee and seeing what they're concerned about, what kind of criteria they're interested in looking at. So if they're looking, we've developed criteria like highways, proximity to roadways, proximity to the airport, proximity to different locations that have a lot of congestion. And they're going to help us map out the different locations and then reach out to their friends, their neighbors, their co-workers, family members who live or work near one of these locations. And then we can go out and install an air monitor at the location that they're concerned about. So we started installing these monitors in late July, and we're going to be working through the fall to find more locations. And we're going to be also doing monitoring in the winter to look at some of the differences in pollutants between seasons. So in Washington, there's a lot of there's been a lot of wildfires, so we have a lot of data from the wildfires in August, but there's also a lot of wood burning in the winter season. So people are concerned about all of those wood sources. Great. So the work that we've been doing has had a lot of challenges. There's countless number of challenges that we've had to overcome. And primarily the first one for us was recruiting organizations and the time commitment to have people engage in these studies, come to meetings, participate in a steering committee. So one of the things that we found was having visits to the center. So a lot of my work with the child care centers was visiting in person, talking to parents one-on-one, bringing a paper questionnaire and having them fill it out and have a conversation with them right then and there. Also having our meetings for community members in the evenings, holding them in public places where people can, readily go, drive there and go after work so they're not busy. Another challenge was siting. So our low-cost monitors need to be plugged in into an electrical outlet, and not every organization is going to have an electrical outlet at a convenient location. So we had to think of strategies of, well, if we can't put it at the child care center, is there someone who works there or a family who attends there that has a backyard with an outlet that we can use to set up a monitor? So that was one of the strategies. And another issue was, how do we set up an air monitor at a child care center when there might be kids playing around? So the picture on the right, on your left, on the left is an air monitor that we installed on a porch that is at a home-based daycare center. So they were concerned if we use the traditional tripod that we use in a lot of locations, children are going to climb it, they're going to get in it. So we were looking for, how can we install this monitor in a safe location that is going to be representing the exposure that children get when they're playing outside. Another challenge that I wasn't really aware of at the beginning was that, some organizations were concerned that we were going to find really bad air quality at their centers, and this is going to dissuade people from, going to these centers and not, like just completely like ruining the relationship with the community members. So they were really concerned about that. So one of the challenges was, how do we frame this into a positive, right? So taking the negative of like finding bad air quality, well, what can we do? So we can make recommendations about when kids go outside. We can make recommendations for the city planning. So we can take the information that we learn about the air quality and use it in a way that actually helps everyone in the community. Again, with the growing amount of data, there's concerns about who owns this data. So one of the things that we did is we have a memorandum of understanding between UW and the community partner, and we have joint ownership. So the community members want the data, they can use it, and when we use it, they're aware of how we're using it. Anytime we notify them about what we're doing with the data, and we are planning on having the data publicly hosted on a real-time website so that people can look at the data, from their backyards basically. But we are gonna, jitter the coordinates. People aren't gonna be able to see like the exact location if it's at somebody's home or, if they're not comfortable sharing that data with everyone. Again, in general, just some strategies with working with community members. Like I mentioned, having a memorandum of understanding, so laying everything out at the beginning of the study so that everyone is on the same page about how the study is going to be conducted, what everyone's responsibilities are, who has ownership of the data, how is the data going to be used, and what is everyone's responsibility. And of course, following through with all of our research, with our community partners through the research, making the research very based on what they're concerned about. So not necessarily what our study, like what the parent study is concerned about, but what the community members are concerned about. Other strategies, like I mentioned, was holding our meetings at a time that everyone can attend, having a point person, in addition, having a media presence, so having a website where people can find information about the study itself. So here's the study website that we have right now up on the UW server, and we're going to be adding more information as it becomes available. In addition, as we continue our monitoring, we're going to be contacting members of the community to conduct focus groups to learn more about how people want to receive information about the air quality. So we're working on report back materials. And these are just a couple of examples of report back material graphs that I've been working on for the parent study. So I've been working with the older adults in the Seattle region to find more information about how they want to look at air quality results, because it's not very intuitive, like we all know. Great. And again, as we continue, we're going to be working on developing educational materials based on the needs assessment findings. So based on the gaps in the knowledge, we're going to have educational materials and a workshop for all our community members. Great. And these are my community partners, my UW team, my advisors, Leanne, Edmund, and Vanessa, and of course, our funding. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation, Nancy. Our next speaker, Jennifer Gabrys, comes also from a distance from the UK, correct? And she'll be here to talk about her work there.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the introduction and chance to present work here today. I'm going to, sorry, just get this going first. Is it this way, point tip, or this way? Oh, there it is. Okay. So I've been leading a project called Citizen Sense for the last 5-6 years now in London. Sorry, that's not the first slide. And it's funded by the European Research Council. And we've been looking at the rise of low-cost sensors that communities are using. And I'll show you, I guess, in a minute. Okay, so I guess we'll have to go back here. There we go. So I'll just go ahead here. So that's our website there. And I was interested that the very first session, the discussion of democratizing environmental data came up, because that's one of the things that we've been researching, is how sensors are meant to enable this rise of the democratization of data. But because we're based in a sociology department, one of the things we're doing in part is investigating that claim and really putting it to the test and asking whether it does and how it does, and potentially how it might not. So one of the things we did initially was to look at a number of DIY and other devices and to engage with that hacker maker space and see to what extent that was traveling through to an environmental justice space. And we found that didn't necessarily match up so well. We were also looking at things like smart city imaginaries. Here you can see a scheme developed by MIT in 2008 that suggested that environmental sensors would raise awareness and then air pollution would be improved here in Curitiba. So this was a kind of claim that I found particularly kind of interesting to investigate, since it suggested quite a kind of linear throughput from data to action. But knowing a lot about social practices, having some sense that it might not be that easy. So we tested a number of devices, made our own devices, looked at apps, investigated things like the air quality egg, and I'm sure as many of you know, found that many of these devices did not simply generate data that could be easily used for action to be taken to regulators to improve air quality. So it was in that space that we really wanted to then unpick what these devices do and start to use them with communities to understand how they might use the devices, to query them, to see what kinds of data they produce, and whether and how they could be used to support their claims and concerns. So we did an initial study in Pennsylvania around fracking, where there were communities already doing monitoring of water and air, and they wanted to take the air work further. And so we did that both using the SPEC particulate matter device from Create Lab, as well as a device we made in-house called the Frac Box, which had several electrochemical sensors. And with that, we made a series of data stories. And we also came up with the concept of generating just good enough data, which is not regulatory standard data, but it's data that's just good enough to start to have conversations with regulators, to have regulators do follow-up monitoring, which is what happened in this instance. ATSDR in particular did some follow-up monitoring at sites and corroborated the citizen findings. And with that, then work together to release findings and to speak to multiple agencies so that that citizen data can be acted upon. So with that particular finding, the state of Pennsylvania, the DEP, did announce that it was going to expand its PM 2.5 monitoring network. So that was an infrastructure and a set of experiences that we developed initially that we then wanted to build upon, but to adapt to a new environment in Southeast London, where we're based with Goldsmiths at University of London. And as you might know, London has a particularly bad air quality problem. In fact, looking at the data in London compared to the data in Pennsylvania was really quite shocking, because the levels in London are quite bad, in part because there's so much diesel vehicles, but also due to heating, industry, and construction sources. So this is a kind of significant problem, and our own backyard was really, we thought, the best place to look at this. So this is the view from the tower I'm in, not a very glorious tower, Wilmington Tower, in New Cross in Southeast London, looking out toward Deptford. And you can see there's a whole range of construction activities in quite kind of dense urban environments. I feel like this traffic really doesn't compare with Southern California's traffic, but in London, this is quite a kind of significant roadway, New Cross Road, going out actually to the Channel Tunnel eventually, and it receives quite a lot of traffic. And it is a bit of a canyon type environment as well, with buildings of varying heights from 4 to 6 stories. So this was something that communities were concerned about, levels of traffic, and we began to work with communities. They were also concerned about new construction and development. And here's where air pollution was not a standalone issue. And this was particularly interesting, I think, as part of this research, is that air pollution stood alongside concerns about housing and the housing crisis in Southeast London, which has some similarities with what's going on in California. People felt that there was all this construction that they had to bear the brunt of, and then when the new often luxury housing was going up, they would be displaced from their council housing. So these were very much entangled issues for them of having to experience increased air pollution and then have their neighborhoods changed and not be able to afford to live there anymore. And there's a long history in Deptford and New Cross in Southeast London of community activism and of having to respond to successive waves of regeneration and finding ways to really respond to that. There were other topics and issues going on, such as the construction of a super sewer and people mobilizing by putting up diffusion tubes and having their own findings about significant levels, especially in relation to traffic. And people also trying to protect neighborhood parks as part of trying to counteract construction activity, but also to argue that green spaces do have some beneficial impact on air quality. So that was the community context in which we were trying to understand the larger issues of air pollution as well as community projects. And we then began to work with communities to develop a monitor. We had worked with off-the-shelf monitors and had some experience with bespoke monitors, but here we decided to make a very simple particulate matter monitor called the dust box. The shape of it is based on what particles look like under an electron microscope. So here you might be able to detect the spiky form as pollen, and the lumpy form is basically contaminated soil, carbon coated with lead. And we worked with the designer to do these through a 3D printing process. We had them cast in ceramic. And we did our own PCBs based on a mock-up we initially did with electronics. We just had these produced in Glasgow. And then we put these together with a Wi-Fi board, electric imp, so we could pipe data straight to our platform. And we co-located the devices with one of the key monitoring stations in the London Air Quality Network. So there we were working with Benjamin Barrett, an atmospheric scientist who presented earlier today, to try to have some correspondence between what our devices were producing and the data that was coming out of the LAQN. So as part of that then development, and the devices themselves are very much developed as a response to communities and their concerns, we had a workshop and walk where we identified key sites that people wanted to monitor. We went around and looked at some of those sites, including here you can see the super sewer under construction and the monitoring that they were doing as part of that. We asked why people weren't able to access that data, even though it was a national infrastructure project. And we passed out the dust boxes for the next round then of setting up the dust boxes and going out to people's locations and getting them on the network. So we had monitoring take place around over the course of about 8 to 9 months at about 30 locations. Some of those were consistent monitoring, some of them were on and off. And every site presented its own challenges. Along with that, we had a dust box logbook where we asked people to record their more qualitative observations so that we could build those into the analysis of what we were finding. So we had dust boxes in a wide variety of locations, and one of the questions that came up was the extent to which sighting was informing the readings or not. We did try working with batteries, but we found that we had much more consistent readings when we had access to mains power. So that was also, as we've heard earlier, also something that informed where we could sight. And in some cases, we were building shelters so that we could have them in garden locations and so on. So from that data, one of the key things we did was a series of data workshops with community members to look at what the findings were, to have them basically look through their data and start to maybe correlate that with experiences they might have. Here you can see with the large blue circles, again, kind of fuzzy locations where the monitoring is. Some locations were entirely anonymous due to the sensitivity of what was being monitored, and the smaller circles are existing monitoring locations within the council and city. So we were looking at that data through a platform that we made called AirSift, and here we were using open source open air software, which was an atmospheric software package to look at the data that was coming into our platform. And then with that tool, we made a series of data stories that had the key findings. So I'll just quickly take you through one example, which is PEEPS, which is the first image you saw, that dust box in the council estates. And you can see there were two key locations, 107/234, we had to swap that out, and 145. And here we were seeing some elevated levels up to almost 150 micrograms per cubic meter. And we wanted to zero in on when that was occurring. We were using time graphs to look at time of day and so on. But we used the polar plots to quite considerable effect to show that there was a strong signal from the east. And if we just zoom back, you can see that the kind of key thing that's to the east is the River Thames. And we were quite surprised by that possibility. We compared that to a background site to rule out regional sources. And then we used scatter plots to also rule out wind-blown dust. And so from that, we were able to say that the river was a significant source of pollution. And that led into our key findings, that traffic was, of course, a significant source of pollution, construction activity, but also the river. And that urban design could have a significant effect. We found that the lowest levels in our network were due to monitors that were in garden spaces. So we worked with citizens to come up with a set of actions, which you can see on the data stories. You can go onto our website to look at that. And we had some press around that. The local MP took it to Parliament to raise it for debate. And then there were a series of community projects that came out of that for improving transport in the area, and also trying to crowdfund to protect the garden as something that is a tidal wildlife garden that is helping with air pollution. So just to say that that was the infrastructure that was built, and now there's a next round of proof of concept funding that I'm working on to develop an air kit. So watch this space, and if you have any interest in this, please do get in touch. And there are all the acknowledgement details for the many community groups, as well as consultants and collaborators we worked with. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for a number of fascinating presentations. So we do have time for questions, about 5 minutes before our break. If you have any questions, please feel free to step up to the microphone and introduce yourself. So to kick it off, I actually have a question for the panel. So you may have noticed that the folks that we gathered together on this panel have something in common. In the case of at least 3 of you, you're with universities, and then of course with government. And so one of the questions that I have is, in your experience of coming into a community to work on a project with that community, can you talk a little bit about the dynamic there, especially thinking about when your project is completed and you then are leaving the community and kind of what happens next? Be interested in any insights you have on that.
Well, I can start there. I think that's a really important question. And with the work that I've showed now, it's interesting because Goldsmiths is based in that community. So there are ongoing conversations, even though the project, the monitoring study as such, came to a close with the launch of the data stories. There's ongoing conversations about community projects, as well as conversations about potentially how to do new projects, such as the proof of concept project. At the same time, I think it is a kind of question of resources and how to manage time and so on, when you only have so much time in a day to work on projects, and need to find a way to basically have a kind of significant moment of reporting and communication so that the project has a sense of taking on its own life in the world, really. And so that's something that we look for in this particular work, is how can we build capacity? It's a phrase that we've heard a lot, but also that the work can go on to inform other projects. So the 2 projects I showed from the community, I think, are particularly important because people are developing their own initiatives that are alongside, but also, in a sense, amplified through that air pollution work.
I largely it's responsive to concerns that the community has. So they ask us to come and help address or look at some sort of an issue. And so with that, I think that really is about building long-term relationships. And there's sometimes research projects that may come in and out, but I think we try to have consistency in engaging and talking and working with these different community organizations like through the long term. So it's not project by project basis.
If I can add something to that, very short. What I've seen in the community building in the Netherlands, that with respect to the relation with RIVM, that they wanted to continue the relationship with RIVM, and they also want to start a new initiative, like you already said. But there was one other aspect was important, that there were a lot of results of this campaign, this experiment, and they thought a lot about it, and they also go to their local government to show the results and to discuss with the local government and do something about it. It was an important aspect.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question in the audience. Let's go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Ryan Meyer at the Center for Community and Citizen Science at UC Davis. And I'm not quite sure I know how to ask this question, but I'm new to the air quality arena. And it's interesting to see all the enthusiasm around low-cost sensors, and at the same time, here's so many examples of interesting work with communities. And what I'm wondering, I guess, is do these new sensors and the new possibilities with this technology really change what it means to do this kind of work with communities, in your opinions, having had these experiences? What is different about working with communities on these issues with these new pieces of technology, given all the other things that go into work with communities?
Very interesting question. Who would like to start?
So I think to some extent, really having the ability to have more than one monitor. I think in the past when some of the equipment will be used, it's really high cost to only have one. Now that we can really decentralize some of the monitoring that we do, it really enables a lot more people to participate and to look at a lot more different kinds of questions that I think really the community can design, because you have access to monitors and to be able to look at the data. I mean, that said, I think there's a lot of interpretation and analysis and processing of the data that goes to be part of it. And so either through training communities to be able to do that, or like working on programs so you can really look at the data. So although it's a lot easier to collect a lot more data, perhaps now with some of these tools, you know, with that it goes all the analysis and processing of that data to make sure that it's really interpretable and usable in the community.
Maybe three things about that. With the fracking study in particular that we did, people really felt that having their own data would be something that would allow them to speak to regulators in a way that they wouldn't be able to do, because it would seem that they just had impressions about what was going on in the environment. So hard data was something they felt would allow them to have that conversation, and also to come to some agreements within a community that had a lot of divisions within it. So that was interesting to see the role that data played as a kind of mediator within communities. At the same time, the technology doesn't displace the need for certain kinds of community organizing that people might already be quite good at. So it's important to kind of keep that in perspective and not see the technology as something that's going to displace that, but it might organize it in different ways. So maybe those are the key things I would say.
I just want to add that I've seen that working with communities, and a lot of communities already have, you know, these organizations that are very, you know, active and vocal about like, the issues that they're seeing in their neighborhoods. But meeting people out there, I saw that everyone was really excited about having data, like everyone said, that can be used to inform policy change. So people were really excited about, you know, putting up an air monitor at a busy intersection where they've been complaining about like diesel trucks going by and like the city not really caring about the traffic in their neighborhoods. So I think it's really empowering for communities, even the ones that have already been active, to have this data that they can use as proof for policymakers.